Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords. And today I'm going to be doing a review of Sons of Lady 87, which is a campaign book, like a large adventure series for the Ogre Gate, game. It is published by Bedrock. It's from Wandering Heroes. I was trying to remember the beginning. Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate, which I reviewed in a previous video, I believe, or on my blog. I forget how long ago I did it. It's either on the blog or on an early video in the reviews section here. So this is by Bedrock Games. And so I should comment that Bedrock Games is the publisher of Arrows of Indra. And so I do have a pre-existing relationship with them. However, I had nothing to do with the production of this book or of Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate. I don't make any money, obviously, from this review, like I never do. And I don't make any potential money from any sales of this game in any way. All right. So, and I believe I can be neutral in my analysis of the product. So to start you out, I'll say that Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate is a wuxia fantasy campaign with strong elements of this kind of historical fantasy sort of setting that is, unfortunately, unlike, say, Arrows of Indra or Sword and Caravan, where I use real history and real places in a sense. Well, in Arrows of Indra, it's actually the real mythological world of the Mahabharata, and in Sword and Caravan, it's the real Silk Road. But in Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate, Bedrock instead has a fantasy world. It has a fantasy world that is very, very heavily influenced by actual history and by the influence of wuxia films put together. And the actual history is that his fantasy world is very strongly inspired by the Song Dynasty. Now, the Song Dynasty was the dynasty that ruled. Well, by the time of Sword and Caravan, it ruled half of China, the Southern Song Dynasty. And it was the most advanced civilization the world had ever known until the Industrial Revolution, until it got its ass kicked by Genghis Khan, unfortunately. But it's my favorite Chinese dynasty, and one that I'm sure that at some point, inevitably, I'm going to end up doing a source book for the Song Dynasty, where I will then expand my, the Sword and Caravan game, so so it covers the territories of the Southern Song, and I'm already doing some other stuff. For example, those of you who watched my live stream the other day on Sunday would know that I've now announced that I'm coming out with a new series of short books called the Pundit Files. That are going to be published on the Game Shop store website of the Red Room. So it's going to be, the Red Room's going to be hosting it. They're not co-writing it or anything like that. They're not publishing it for me in this case, but they are hosting it. And so that's a pretty cool thing, actually. And I'll be telling you guys more about that later. But the reason I bring it up at this moment is because inevitably some of the stuff is going to be related to Sword and Caravan, and one of the early issues is going to be providing some new martial artist classes for Sword and Caravan based on the Song Dynasty martial tradition, which is what this is based on in a way, although it's much more Hollywood, right? And it's not actually in the Song Dynasty. It's in some fantasy world that is inspired by the Song Dynasty. Then we get to a second big issue. I'm kind of covering all the bad parts first for some reason. I don't want you to just turn off the video right now, assuming this is going to be terribly bad in every way. I'm telling you the two worst parts right now. And the first worst part is the one that I just said, that it's not actually set in the actual Song Dynasty. But I think for a lot of gamers, they don't see that as something that's all that bad the way I do. So I'm sure that a lot of you will think, well, that's not really an issue for me. That's only a pundit problem, which might be true. But the second problem is that this is not an OSR game, right? Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate is not an OSR game in any way. It's got its own system that you'd have to have the main book to learn. Now, that said, I mean, if you take this only for the fluff part, and just, made your own stats for the characters, it might still even be playable, though it would be a little bit complicated to alter. So just how close to history is the Sons of Lady 87 as a campaign? Well, I'll put it this way. Lady 87 was a real person, like in our real history. She was a famous crime lord in the Southern Song dynasty. She really existed, okay? So this is a real person. Now, the version of her in this book is pretty wildly exaggerated, obviously, right? So here she is a criminal mastermind, of incredible capacity. And essentially, the campaign, so now we're starting to get into the good parts, right? Because, it's pretty cool that it's based on an actual historical character. It's also very cool that the campaign is set up basically as a kind of sandbox, what he calls here a living adventure. But it's probably more accurately described as a kind of, it's a sandbox with roads, right? Like with roads going through it, so that there's some paths to undertake there. Here he gives a list of his various inspirations. Brendan is a huge fan of wuxia films. To be honest, I don't recognize quite a lot of these. If you told me, Outlaws of the Water Margin or Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which are the original wuxia stories, then that would be a different story. But a lot of these I'm not familiar with. I'm familiar with a few of them. Legend of the Condor Heroes sounds familiar to me. Oh, that's because it is okay. And a few others. But anyways, the point is, if you're into like kung fu action, you might actually recognize some of these sources. Kung fu action movies, I mean. So essentially, Lady 87 is a woman who has a gang that there are 87 killers that are part of her criminal empire, though it's not literally, I believe. And the whole thing takes place in a prefecture of Hanju, which is a make-believe place in this make-believe world that is very heavily based on the Song dynasty. I should actually be glad that he didn't do it in the Song dynasty, because otherwise I'd be accused of ripping him off when I get around to doing mine, right? There's new kung fu techniques, new poisons, equipments, and disease, new monsters. I'm looking through this helpful summary because that'll prevent me having to spend, like 35 minutes paging through things instead. There are some appendices. So this is not exactly a pure sandbox, but it is close to one. The central part of the campaign is that Lady 87's criminal shadow empire has long dominated the region, but the emergence of the Celestial Plume traders threatens to disrupt their control. Players begin as newly prospective members of the 87 Killers, but can improve their standing in the organization and be brought into the ranks of the organization that prove themselves. The campaign starts with Lady 87 sending them to intercept the Caravan and trace the origins of its contents to prove their value to her. If they do well, she rewards them. If they do poorly, she sends them on increasingly dangerous missions, hoping to improve their skills or be rid of them. Eventually, there's a conflict that will arise, and this could produce a war in the martial world, and players will need to navigate that chaos. So, essentially, it's gang warfare in a very kind of wuxia-style fantasy version of the Song dynasty. There are some very neat parts. So, first of all, the product itself, it's 290 pages, more or less. It's in black and white, but as you can see, it has some very good artwork, including some examples. It's got some very interesting random tables for like ways to shake up the sect war, and tables of groups and people, and of Lady 87 herself, random checks for what she might do, which is all awesome. That's the sort of thing you want in a good campaign like this. Plus some strange events. There's a large backstory and an overview of the different groups, all of which have, those very wuxia kind of names, like the Heavenly Wind Cult and the Jade Owl Bandits. And then you get like a sect war map, which outlines all of the different kind of elements of who's involved, where they are, who's with who and who is not. And I think that's really clever, because that's something that can be like a reference that the DM sets up for the players, or he has another one that he keeps changing as allegiances shift or something like that, so very, very good stuff. Very creative, actually. Some very nice pieces of art. You get details of all the major characters as well, with their stats, of course, for the Ogre Gate game. So it's OSR, it'll mean nothing to you, but if you're familiar with the Ogre Gate game, then you're probably going to want to check this out, because it is really an excellent source book for that game. I see that there's potential for it to be something that you could strip for ideas for an OSR game set in a kind of wuxia setting, It wouldn't be automatically compatible, but it could be useful, There's a lot of good stuff here. Again, lots of excellent tables. I'm very impressed with some of these, random personalities you might run into depending on where you are, rumor tables, some pretty damn good maps here of like the prefecture and whatnot. Gonna have to figure out who did this for him and see if I can't, when the time comes, I can't get them to do a map of a hex map of the Southern Song Dynasty, because that looks pretty good, doesn't it? There's Laws of the Empire. Some of the particular customs of different places are covered. It's a really good regional setting book, and as well as whatever else is going on there, So I think that's quite clever. And then you get some like really excellent, like this stuff is something that's always been in Bedrock's books, these kind of non-dungeon maps that are nevertheless like super, super interesting. I'm sure I'm going to use this map even if I don't use anything else in the game, like this floor plan. We have a Meatball here who was immediately drawn to the map. What's going on, Meatball? Huh? Yeah. She's been especially grumpy these last few days. I don't know. I think she's just getting old. She's becoming a little old lady. So, trying to think if there's anything else that I need to really add to this. I mean, you got everything you could use in the campaign is here, right? Locations, people, enemies, all the stats you need, all the info you need, random tables. Meatball's not included in the actual book. Only I have her. It's the special edition. Meatball, I need this space. You always do this when I'm doing a review. You always show up and then sit on the book being reviewed. How do I continue now? What am I supposed to do with? Hey, you listen to me. Hey. Please, can I continue with the review? Do you think I can continue? I think a lot of my viewers wouldn't really care if I continued with the review at this point. They'd rather see Meatball. However, this is not the Meatball channel, Meatball. It's certainly not the Meatball sits on books to tell you how comfortable they are. It's the RPG Pundit reviews the book. All right? So get with the pro... There she goes again. She's trying to sit on it now. So... You've got all kinds of very interesting characters, locations. Like I said, 290 pages, right? So that's a full-sized campaign. And as you saw when I was earlier on, before Meatball came and destroyed everything, I was doing the overview of the table of contents. You could see that there was a lot of new powers and abilities too. If you're an Ogre Gate fan and you're looking for that. She's pawing at it. She's like, nope, stop right there, please. All right. So to summarize, I don't think I need to tell you a lot more about this. I think I've given you enough of a glimpse that you can see the quality that is in the book, what is good about it, what is bad about it. To me, what is bad about it is not there's nothing about it that is bad as an adventure, right? Like the design is very good. It's very ordered. It's a big adventure. It allows, I can imagine this would be a lengthy campaign, and that would be the sort of thing you'd want if you got it. And it's excellently handled. I think it's relatively well organized. It's a ton of info. There's tons of stuff there. So no doubt you're going to be looking stuff up and having to try to figure out where you remember things from. But the index is very clear, so that can help a lot. Like the bad parts of it, as far as I'm concerned, is just that it's not an OSR product. If it was an OSR product, suddenly you could use that with all kinds of stuff, and that it's quasi. It's not even quasi. It's fantasy inspired by history instead of being historical fantasy. But that's my beef. I recognize that almost no one else will care. I will, because I've come to feel that, setting stuff in actual history. But that's just me and James Raggy, basically, right? I don't know how many other people even do that. But yeah, I would certainly recommend the Lady 87 book to anyone who is a fan of Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate. I think that you won't be disappointed if you run it with that game. It's not my favorite game mechanically, but obviously, like, the concept is good, the setting is good, and the genre elements are quite good. They're very good, because it's very clear. It's very clear that Brendan knows that the author knows wuxia fiction as accurately as I know, let's say, the Mahabharata. So he has studied at like a postgraduate level about wuxia films. Not literally. He hasn't gone to film school or something, as far as I know, but he's clearly put that much time and effort and study into it, as I did in studying the Mahabharata. And that's a pretty big deal. That's a lot of study. That's like he can write a book on it, which he has. He's written more than one. So you're not going to go wrong with that. But again, I know a lot of you are just OSR people, and in that case, what I could say about the book is that there's a lot of inspirational stuff to rip off. There's beautiful hex maps, there's beautiful floor plans that are not the classic dungeon style, but in that style that I showed you just now. That Bedrock Games, in their own products, they seem to inevitably put one in there. But you'll have to just reinvent everything into the OSR system if you want to use it. So I guess that's it. That's everything I have to say about this. If you thought this was a useful review, please share it anywhere you think people find it interesting. I doubt anyone will get offended by it. And if this is the first time you're here, check out my other reviews in the review playlist, or my other videos, which are much more rantier than my typical reviews. And in my community posts, you'll see lots of pictures of Meatball. And please hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell, especially so you can see those photos of Meatball, right? If you've got the notification bell, you should, in theory, receive community posts from that. And I do about one a day. So, any day that I'm not doing a video. So then you'll see more photos of Meatball, if that's what you like, among other stuff. And check out all my products, right? Sword and Caravan and Arrows of Indra, if you like Eastern flavored fantasy gaming in these OSR, check out my latest source book for Swords and Caravan, Heroes and Villains of the Silk Road. Like, there's a thing, right? Heroes, I should have put my Heroes and Villains book here, because that has all of these historical biographies and stats for all these people that were actually real fascinating people of the Silk Road, which you could port back and forth between the rogues that are described in the Sons of Lady 87, So it's quite funny, actually, in a way. Anyways, Heroes and Villains is a great source book for you to use for any OSR game, of course, especially for Sword and Caravan, but you can port these characters into just about anything. And it also has the Assassin class for Lion and Dragon. And speaking of which, keep your eyes open in about probably not more than a week's time. I'll make an announcement when it's out, obviously. Issue 1 of the Pundit Files will be coming out in the Red Room's website for sale. There'll be one coming out every 2 weeks, basically. And issue 1 is about events that will shake up your campaign. It's a random generator. And how much does it cost? About $3.50. So that's what's the average price of an issue of the Pundit Files was likely to be, $3.50. All right. And I guess that's everything for today. Thank you very much for listening. Currently smoking Lorenzetti Poker plus Argento Roots. Bye-bye, meatball.